I appreciate everyone joining. So this is essentially our to our overall diversity, equity, and inclusion strategy. Yeah.
Make it official.
We'll send more information around what our strategy looks like and what we'll be focusing on for 2023. But we just felt like as we kind of start bringing that to life, we didn't want to miss an opportunity to really celebrate Black History Month. And so in partnership with Dan Pabon, we connected with Leslie and thought it was a great opportunity to really talk about the importance of Black history and celebrating it from a societal standpoint, but also how does this tie back to cannabis and what are some opportunities that we can do as an industry to really drive positive change within the Black community and cannabis. And so I wanted to bring this event. I'm really excited that Leslie was able to join us today.
Yeah.
So I'll hand it over to Dan, who is very familiar with Leslie and can give us an introduction.
Thanks, Jennifer. And Representative Herod, thanks for being here with us today to celebrate this inaugural kickoff to the company's commitment to the community, to diversity, equity, and inclusion. I couldn't think of a better person to help us on that endeavor than my friend Leslie Herod. We have known each other since college, but ever since then, we've had a mutual agreement that anything that happened in college, before college, after college remains a secret for both of our.
Depending on the price.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, but just to give a quick introduction, and I want to give it to the head of the show here. Representative Herod and I have been friends since college, working together in student government then, and then various other sectors along the way. Representative Herod has been actively involved in the nonprofit community, the private sector, the community safety area, and mental health. And so she has a quite vast of experience in seeing all kinds of different issues, not just equity issues or African American issues, but seeing how real people are impacted by decisions that are made at the local level, the state level, and even the federal level. So she brings to us a wealth of information, both with her own life experience, but also representing parts of Denver, in which she has been doing so since 2016. Is that right, Representative Herod?
Absolutely. You got it.
So, and she was instrumental in working on so many issues together in the legislature, from protecting public safety, ensuring that folks had a voice when many times the voiceless didn't have an advocate, making sure that police and others were held accountable when it was necessary, and finding the balance in ensuring that those who wanted to express themselves, particularly in their school, could have the ability to do so. So Representative Herod has been on the front lines of representing all kinds of communities from the beginning and has never wavered in that commitment. I will finish by saying she has broken ground along the way in her life experience and her life story. I'm sure she'll share a little bit of that with us. I hope she does anyway. But most importantly, she's broken new ground in the city of Denver recently when she announced to throw her hat in the ring to be mayor of Denver. And it's a historical moment for all of us. If you know much about the history of Denver and all the things, good or bad, that have happened in our city, and to see someone of Representative Herod's caliber step into the ring. And I'll just say, if you look at the polling data from recently, she's doing very well, and you should keep an eye on her. So we're excited to have her with us. Representative Herod, thanks for taking the time. I know you're extremely busy. You've got a lot of different priorities, so we're honored to have you. With that, let's give a warm round of applause for Representative Herod to be here.
Thank you, my friend, for that introduction. I'd love to know which poll you're behind, Mr. Pabon. If you all live in Denver, you might have been getting a lot of messages on different polls every few minutes. But yes, I am Leslie here, and I am running to be Denver's next mayor. We've never had a female mayor before, and Denver has been very clear that it is time for a female to step into the role. I joke and say that Denver is coined the Queen City. We've never had a queen lead. It's time. It's time. So I'm looking forward to that. But I'll step back and give you guys a little bit of my background. And then I would love to just open up for conversation and dialogue. So I was actually born in Germany on a military base. My mom was an OBGYN in the Army. A lot of Black folks particularly are overrepresented in the armed forces, particularly because many, like my mom, were looking for better opportunity, especially educational opportunities for her children. And so she served and sacrificed so that my brother and I could be here today. And I got to live all around the world, which I thought was extremely cool, whether it was in Germany or in Korea or here in Colorado or in San Francisco. I got to see, how people live their lives differently. I got to see that firsthand. And I believe that that's really helped me in my career today because, I don't judge someone based on who they are, where they come from, their culture. I want to know what I can learn from, learn from it. And I think that's an important perspective that not everyone necessarily has, but I think along the way, as we grow into our leadership and into who we are, we pick that up. It's about treating people as people. And I was just very lucky to have that experience at a young age. But along the way, I think I met Dan, which was probably some of the challenges in my life. I went to CU Boulder. I'm a buff. I was really excited to go to that school. But as I went on the first day of school to CU, I went to my first very large classroom and realized very quickly that CU was not the diverse institution that I thought it was. There were Black people in the brochures when I applied for CU, and then I realized on campus that we were about 1% African American. And so I had a pretty big shock because I was used to growing up in very diverse cultures. Even military bases obviously are quite diverse. And going to CU was pretty interesting. But in those first few days, I met a lot of folks, including Dan and others, who were looking to change the way that the campus community was, especially for people of color, LGBTQ folks, low-income folks, everyone. And someone tapped me on my shoulder when I was walking from class to class and said, I know what you're looking for. We meet in the UMC at noon. Come hang out. And they did know what I was looking for. I was looking for community. And I went and I saw, tables full of diverse students, Black Student Alliance, Umasi Mecha, the Jewish students, the Muslim students, women's groups, everyone. And I thought, wow, this is why I'm here, And then I went back to my classroom and it was still very white. And so I thought, well, why don't we do something about this? And so we kind of looked at all the different tables, if you will, of folks that were representing different groups at lunch. And we said, let's all run for student government. And we did. We all kind of picked some folks out of each little table and ran for student government as a progressive ticket. And we won every single seat that we ran for, and we ran for every seat that was open. So we launched the Progressive Coalition, and were able, by the time I graduated CU, I had been the president of our legislative council and ran a $36 million budget all before I was 20 years old. And so that was a pretty empowering experience to see that we can make direct change. We created things like SOURCE, the Student Outreach and Retention Center for Equity, to make sure that we were retaining students that look like me and look like us. But also just leading student movement across the country because we were the largest student government in the nation. I had no idea when I ran that we were the largest student government in the nation, but we were. And so was able to work on things like ending prison labor, making sure that our campus was more sustainable, things that seem very old school now, but weren't. We were the first public institution to pass domestic partner benefits. These are things that were unheard of at the time, but we showed folks that when you did them, the sky didn't fall. And in fact, life continues in a great way, a better way. And so that kind of gave me my bug to say that I could actually make change in community and run for office. But I didn't think I personally could run for office because I had never seen anyone like me in office before. I'm the first African-American LGBTQ person to hold elected office in Colorado. I should say the first openly LGBTQ African-American to hold elected office in Colorado. In my campaigning as mayor and listening to different stories, it's very clear to me that there were plenty others, but they were not able to be out. And so I'm very lucky to be in a community that embraces all parts of me. And I'm elected not despite who I am, but because of who I am, but recognizing that that hasn't always been the case. So with that burden with that knowledge comes a burden and a responsibility to make sure that we continue to expand access to all avenues of power, of activism, of change to everybody, regardless of where you come, what you look like. Those lived experiences are actually what makes you stronger in these positions. And so now as I sit and I think about, actually served as in very some similar roles as Dan did. I was the chair of the finance committee when we were going to reauthorize some of the bills that Dan worked on when it came to the cannabis industry. And for me, it was really important that we started having a conversation about social equity. And as much as Dan and I and others have really fought for social equity within this space, we have not reached anything I think we should be touting yet, as an industry. We know the industry is still very limited for who can profit off of it, who has access to the industry. And these are models that we're looking to change. But we're lucky to do it in partnership with folks some partners who actually want to see more social equity in the industry as well. Even if they're big behemoths in the field, they want to support equity, social equity. And kind of, I think, understanding that we're coming into an industry that was formerly used to incarcerate and tear apart entire communities, and that there's some responsibility behind that too. And so I am proud of where Colorado is and how far we've come, but I know that there's so much more work to do. So I bring all of those lived experiences to the table, but I think one more thing I should add is an experience that is personal to my family, which is that my sister was actually incarcerated for 30 years, in and out of the system for 30 years. Never a very long stint. No high-level crimes, but predominantly she was incarcerated around substance misuse and criminality around that substance misuse. She was incarcerated at first when she was 16 years old in Oakland, California. And we didn't know it. I didn't know until I was in my 20s that she was sexually assaulted around that same time and turned to substances to treat some of her pain. This was around the same time that I was actually born. So my mom and my brother and me were overseas. And she chose to stay in Oakland with her father. And unfortunately, some things happened to her that led her down a path of addiction. And we didn't have the tools to support her. We had no idea. I don't even think honestly, we didn't have the words. Me as a kid, but then as we grew, it just became kind of second nature that my sister may or may not show up, may or may not be incarcerated, may or may not be addicted or struggling with her addiction. And that has generational consequences, right? Generational impacts. All because we didn't ask what was wrong. All because we didn't say, how can we help? And so I do a lot of my work and dedicate a lot of my work to my sister because I know that we could do things better. There's no reason why she should have been incarcerated for crank in the 90s. That doesn't make any sense. She was never dealing, it was all personal use. That doesn't make sense. But we know what that happened. And she got involved with zero tolerance policies, 3 strikes you're out. So she would come out, not be able to work, not be able to take care of her kids, and then go back in eventually. We can't go back there. We can't go back. And I think some of the issues that Denver is facing today, folks would have you believe that that is the direction we should go. Incarcerate people who are addicted, incarcerate people who are on the streets homeless. And for me, that is not social equity. For me, that is not looking at, people in our society that need help and support and getting them that help and support. I should say that my sister is clean and sober. She has been off paper for over a year and a half now. She has renewed her lease 2 times, and she's in school for political science now. And so there is a path to recovery, and it starts with having those conversations, but then also making sure that we're providing those supports. Thanks to some work that Dan and I have done together, we have banned the box on things like, prior convictions for work. Also housing. It's important. If you're not housed and you can't work, you're not going to really get back on your feet. We know that. It doesn't work, And so these are the policies that we have to put in place to right some of the wrongs that we've talked about for so long. And then as I said in Black History Month, I think it's really kind of fun to talk about some of the other work that we've done. One of the things is to be one of the first states in the country to pass the Crown Act. The Crown Act is a bill that bans discrimination based on ethnic hairstyle. And for too long, people who look like me, who look like some others in this room, have been told that their hairstyles are not professional and they have to change their hair in order to fit some European standard of what is acceptable or not. And this was something that actually was codified in law through the courts. They said that hair discrimination was not racial discrimination. And so, young Leslie grew up thinking that there's no way I could wear my natural hair or protective hairstyles and be a legislator, right? Or be professional, or at the time, be a cheerleader, and that really causes a lot of trauma. And so we changed that law. And in fact, we did it before it was called the Crown Act. We introduced the bill because I heard about a young girl at East. She was a cheerleader, and she was told if she couldn't get her ponytail to look like her white counterpart's ponytails, that she couldn't cheer in competition. And if you're a cheerleader, you know that that's a big deal, and it's pretty heartbreaking. And then I later found out that the wrestler who got his hair cut in the meet, and a lot of folks that went viral in Texas, it's actually my second cousin. And seeing how close that is to home for me and so many others made me introduce the bill. And it was so interesting because what I thought only or predominantly impacted Black people does not. I heard we had testimony from Native American boys and Asian young men who were told to cut their hair because it was unacceptable to have long hair as a man. We heard from folks of mixed race, Latinos, a lot of people, Jewish folks who were always told that they had to change their hairstyle to go to work every day or to go to school or to participate in activities. And so we changed that. It wasn't until Oprah came in and said it's called the Crown Act that we called it the Crown Act. But I will tell you, when Oprah says that you're calling something, you really do that. There's no real arguing. Like, no, I know PR better than you, Oprah. There's no arguing. And then they came in and started the Crown campaign alongside of Dove to really change the way that people of color, especially young people of color, are seen as we walk in the world in our natural selves, or however we want to. And so that's been an exciting move for Colorado, especially because a lot of folks, I don't think outside of Colorado, think there are any Black people in Colorado to begin with. So we were able to do that work. But additionally, I think Colorado is really an amazing place, especially Denver, for standing in the gap and like stepping up to the moment. When we were in the middle of protests in 2020, the summer of 2020, Colorado and Denver stepped up and said, we will not accept police brutality in our communities anymore. We will not turn a blind eye to what has been going on for generations and act like we can't do anything about it. And I'm proud to have worked with community law enforcement activists and abolitionists to say, we're going to change the law here. And Colorado became one of the first states in the nation to pass a comprehensive, and the only, to pass a comprehensive police accountability bill to make sure that law enforcement is held accountable when harm is done in our communities. But what most folks don't know about that time was we also, alongside of that, stood up STAR, Support Team Assisted Response. We're now in Denver, if you call 911 for someone who's having a mental health crisis or a substance misuse crisis, you can get an EMT and a mental health professional as a response, not just law enforcement. We can do things differently. We do things differently in Denver, and we just have to try it. We just have to do it. We have to listen to the people who have solutions, and those are usually folks on the ground. So again, back to the industry, y'all got a lot of hard work in front of you, whether it's around equity issues or just running your business here in Colorado or across the country. Laws are changing every minute. There's a lot of prohibitionists that are still determining the outcome of this industry. Which is very, I think, difficult when you have people who don't believe you should exist or that your industry is not reputable. Deciding the regulation around your industry causes a lot of problems, shall we say? And I've seen that. I've watched it firsthand. I've looked at it. I've seen it. And it's something that we have to continue to work on. And so my ask of you all is, as we're thinking about this work, whether it's around social equity or your work here in the cannabis industry, is to always center the people, always center equity, and always question what you can do differently or better. Because the path that we're on right now, we're not getting it right. And so innovation is necessary if we really want to lift up, especially those who are disproportionately impacted by the overcriminalization of plant of cannabis. So So that's me. That's it. And I'd love to have questions or just have conversation. So thanks so much. And I think it's so funny you guys are taking notes because I'm like, why are you taking notes about what I'm saying? But I just have to get used to that. I'm still not used to it. Literally, there's kids who, who tour my office, and I'm like, this is so strange, because I was one of those kids, and it's just an honor to be here. So thank you.
Thank you for being here.
Yeah, thanks.
I actually have a couple of questions.
Sure.
Let me know this does. So this.
Okay. Love it.
No, well, do you know that in Portugal was in 12 years now that all drugs were decriminalized? Interestingly, the legalization of marijuana just is happening right now.
Yeah.
In Colorado, we were going the other way around.
Yes.
That we were the first state legalizing marijuana.
Yeah.
And only now is the state decriminalizing drugs in general. So having a new perspective in how, we treat addiction.
Uh-huh.
So my question is, I know you're running for Denver, maybe just Denver, right? Because
Yes.
actually the first city 3 years ago in decriminalizing magic mushrooms. But I would like to know about your perspective in terms of how to integrate this decriminalization of drugs, not only marijuana, but all of them. What's your vision for Colorado and for the state and maybe for the country too?
This is such an interesting question coming off of the meeting I just came from where folks would have me recriminalize and refelonize drugs. So I worked in partnership with many to also defelonize simple possession of drugs in Colorado. And I think that is the toughest conversation that we have right now as I'm running for mayor. The fentanyl crisis is a crisis. And it comes because you can't get clean drugs. And too many of our young kids are taking fentanyl thinking they're taking an Adderall and they're dying. People are becoming addicted because they're deeply in pain. And some are okay taking fentanyl because of that pain, knowing they may die, right? So we have to change that. We have to get to the root causes of addiction. Part of that is the mental health challenges that people are going through right now. I don't know how many of you all have been homeless, but living on the streets, living sober is hard most of the time, even just without, alcohol or anything, dry January. But living on the street sober is nearly impossible. It's nearly impossible. It's cold. You're being asked to stay awake all night and keep moving and keep walking. You're displaced. The ground underneath you moves every minute. So to not think about dealing with our homelessness crisis, with also not dealing with mental health and addiction challenges and just saying we're going to incarcerate people, it's not going to work. I went to the Jewish Museum in Germany. I don't know if anyone has been there, but they have this garden outside, and it's all concrete garden, and you can walk through it. But what you don't notice right away is that it's really uneven. Everything is at a slant or a tilt or something. And as you walk through this concrete garden, you just start to feel uneasy. You lose your footing, trip sometimes, right? You can't really find your bearings or your place. I liken that a lot to what it must feel like to be homeless. My sister's been homeless. She tells me this too. But to always have to have one eye open, even when you're sleeping in your car, and then being expected to go to work and perform, you don't have anywhere to shower, and people looking at you funny when you shower or you're using a sink to bathe from a public restroom. We're not dealing with our challenges. We're not. We're ignoring them until now they're at a combustible level. So I say that, and then I also want to shift to say that we have created a system of taxation around legalization that funds a lot of our priorities and programs. And so when we decriminalize completely and we don't have a taxing model, then how are we going to fund things like Boys and Girls Club, which is funded through the Marijuana Cash Fund? That doesn't mean we shouldn't change it. It doesn't mean we should do things differently. But we do have to address that in the legislative side of things. I also served as the chair of the Appropriations Committee and had to balance our $40 billion budget for Colorado. And so it's very complicated. It's very complicated. But my values are, and what I believe in, is that people who are using drugs, who are addicted, need help. There are also users who don't need help, who are not addicted. And if they're wealthy and white, they'll never face incarceration for it. Cocaine is one example of that, you know. We know that folks who use cocaine, perhaps they don't all need treatment, right? Perhaps they're recreationally using it, but if you're rich and white, you're never really going to get incarcerated for it. No one busts, you know, the high rise party of cocaine party. Like that just doesn't happen. But our young people, our people of color, our poor people, absolutely it does. And so it's not working. It's racist. It's classist, and it has to change. And so I believe in ensuring that we are not incarcerating those who need help, and we're not saying that anyone who uses drugs recreationally need it or need incarceration. So legalization of mushrooms, yeah, I'm down. I don't know that the model we put in place here in Colorado recently is the right one. It definitely doesn't honor the indigenous customs of where the medicine comes from. And so I think we have to think about that a lot more. You know, legalization is one piece, or decrim is one piece, but it's the legalization that we really have to question and make sure that we're not creating criminals for people who practice their traditional medicine because they didn't get a license, you know?
Yeah.
This is the complication of some of these issues and some of these challenges, and they're entrenched. And so that's what I'll look at. And my commitment is to work on it from that perspective. Yeah, thanks.
So as a company who is, you know, leading the industry in, how can we what can we do to actively participate in your vision and a plan to decriminalization of drugs, and then encouraging positive usage instead of the negative usage? And then what can we do to encourage other leaders or dispensaries or rest of the whole industry to participate along to achieve that? Is there something that, you know, we can passively participate or think about to, you know, become a Kickstarter in a process or anything?
Absolutely. I think that, you know, I think it's that positive use, right? And being able to identify signs when it is no longer positive or beneficial, right? And I think we've all seen that. We all have friends, family members, ourselves. Sometimes we're like, this is not productive use right now. Like we're not going in the right direction. That could be around marijuana, it could be around alcohol, it could be around other drugs or other things in life, right? And so we have to make sure that we know what those warning signs are, and that we have the tools to tell our friend it's time to step back. You know, Caring for Denver. Did I talk about Caring for Denver? I didn't, did I? Okay.
Yeah.
She's glazing over like me a little bit too. So I deeply believe that we're not providing the support that people need today. And so in 2017, I took off my legislative hat and I put back on kind of my activist student, get things done hat. And I went to the ballot. I collected 10,000 signatures to ask Denverites if they would put a 25 cents on a $100 sales tax increase to provide mental health and substance misuse services for those living right here in Denver. I will tell you, I was asked to tax the marijuana industry, and I said no, because, well, you guys know why. I don't need to explain that to you. I said this should be for all of us because we all need the support at one point in our lives, no matter how that looks. We all need it. And I was told we couldn't do it. I was told that it wasn't a function of the city to provide that care. And I did it anyways. With a group of amazing people, we were able to get Caring for Denver on the ballot. And 70% of Denverites said, absolutely, I want to help my friends, my family members, my neighbors, myself. 70% said yes. So we stood up the Caring for Denver Foundation. It took us a little while to get our contract. If you guys have gone through any permitting or contracting process with the city, you know that takes quite some time. It took us quite some time as well. So I know firsthand, but it took us quite some time, about 2 years to stand up the organization from when the voters approved it. But in the past 3 years, we've given out about $100 million in grants to 188 organizations within the city and county of Denver that are providing the mental health and substance misuse care that we need. That's why STAR is in existence. We were the ones to fund STAR after I went out to Eugene, Oregon and saw the Cahoots model working. And I said, why aren't we doing this here? It only cost us $200,000. But the no's were so loud, that they made it seem like it was a money problem, and it wasn't. It wasn't. So we came back and we passed, we got STAR started, and now we're a citywide agency. So I believe that we need to provide more mental health and substance misuse care for people that need it. And when it comes to that, it does take a lot of advocacy. So for you, your organizations that are doing the work, your businesses, you've got to also get involved in the advocacy space to talk about what we can do to make things better. And then you've got to model that behavior, right? Like, what does the executives look like? You know, do they have real lived experience? How often do people take a step back and say it's time for someone else to lead? You know, I'll speak again to my good friend Dan here, who really has been talking to people across the country about what true social equity can look like, you know, and trying to bring those models to fruition. But we're not going to do it if we have elected leaders that continue to say we can't, or no, or you don't belong here, or it's not for you. And so, you know, I've been sitting in the middle of a campaign, but I'd be remiss not to say that you've got to vote for people that actually care, that actually get it. And that takes work, because guess what? A lot of folks that you guys probably deal with on your day-to-day basis, maybe even including many of you in this room, don't believe in voting anymore. Don't believe that that works, because it hasn't for so long. But when there are people on the ballot that actually share, you know, your ideas or thoughts, you've got to vote, you've got to turn out, you've got to be active in the campaign. Right now, we have a couple of days left for the Fair Election Fund. This is the first time we've ever had public financing of campaigns. So for every donation that is given between now and the 28th, so really today, is matched 9 times, which means someone like me who's not independently wealthy can run for office and win. Which is why I think, you know, Dan mentioned this, I am leading in most polls, because I have had the ability to break through a very crowded race. But my opponents want to incarcerate people who are homeless. They want to incarcerate folks who are addicted. And that's just not what I believe in. I think there's also some accountability that businesses need to have with other businesses. So getting together to hold other businesses accountable to what social equity can look like, you know, to making sure the regulations are the right regulations to allow for a plethora of folks to enter into the industry and be successful. Again, we're not there right now. We have not hit that. And then in the day-to-day, your day-to-day activity, like, are you being mindful of racial justice principles? You know, day-to-day, are you thinking about, has someone else's voices been heard? You know, have I listened to someone who's completely different than me? And we all have that responsibility, you know. That's some things that I think we could do immediately. I also think, you know, what's interesting too, and this comes from my experience, get uncomfortable. Get a little bit uncomfortable, you know, position yourself in a situation that you wouldn't traditionally be in. I never would have thought that I would have had so many white rural Republicans voting to decriminalize drugs if I didn't get uncomfortable and go to lunch with these people. And have dinner, right? In their neighborhoods, in their communities. But I'm like, damn, we agree. Like, we're aligned. Let's work on something together, you know? But that comes by just being a little uncomfortable and going, you know? If you've ever been to a Black church, come check us out. Come on Easter, you'll be very welcomed. Easter and Mother's Day is, you know, always quite busy in our churches. You know, go to a mosque, go to a synagogue, you know, just step outside of your everyday and just think about things a little bit differently. Allow an open perspective.
Denver has done a really good job of, at least I want to talk about our business and Denver. Have done a good job of ensuring that, you know, all licenses, all future licenses for cannabis is for social, you know, has been given to social equity players.
Yeah.
Both whether it's a dispensary or whether it's a delivery and so on. I think that's a great thing. Now, you know, one of the things that, you know, I like to understand is how can you improve how it's being implemented? Because what's happening is a lot of a social equity person puts their life savings and, you know, and tries to start a business. but it's a very competitive.
Yeah,
And it's really competitive and they're struggling to run their businesses.
yeah,
They come to us and say, hey, can you buy us out?
yeah, of course.
And then we can't. Because the law, for example, today says we cannot, that we cannot buy it out, even if they want to sell it. And they're struggling. And again, and especially in the last years, the cannabis market has been pretty hard hit in Colorado. So I'm just trying to understand how we can help the social equity partners who are struggling right now.
Yeah.
How we start the business, put their personal savings into it, and may go out of business.
Yeah.
And so, we'd like to help, and I'd like to volunteer Dan to help us, which with you all, like, sure.
I'll throw my hand in the ring.
No, it's strong. So I will tell you something. We had delivery services, delivery licenses.
Yeah.
And we can't
What
really
about-
engage with anyone because they cannot run it.
No, it's a mess.
It's a mess. So how do we help,
Yeah. So we got to step back from the end where people can't handle their businesses and they are closing or they can't sell them and say why. And the number one thing I think you mentioned is they're putting their life savings into this. There's no capital. There's no capital for these businesses to actually succeed with all the regulations that we put on top. But I mean, we can't even keep a coffee shop open in 5 Points right now because there's not equity, there's not capital, in for minority owned businesses. So that's where we got to start.
Right?
Yeah, and we've got to challenge the folks who are, our partners in lending and partnership to say, you know what, like you need to put your faith in a Black-owned company. You need to put your faith in, a woman-led company or someone who's been formerly incarcerated. But we also need funding. I mean, that money is important and the financial wherewithal to be successful. So it's not even necessarily a silent partnership. Like we need your partnership in order to bring equity. And so I think that that's something really important. And then again, the advocacy. I mean, when I saw the delivery model coming both through Denver and through the state, I was like, there's no way. Thanks for giving us this license, but come on, it's not going to work.
It's not.
And opening a brick and mortar costs $1 million. So thanks for saying that we get the licenses, but who can do that?
Right.
I mean, they're going straight from the street game to the, to the legal game, and it doesn't work. It doesn't work. And so we've got to change that.
And I'll just say, Representative Herod, and just so you have context for the Indian gentleman asking the question, Nirup is the president of our company. He's the highest executive, one of the few people of color in the industry that runs the day-to-day operations. So he understands, from a life experience as well, the struggles that people of color in general have, not just in this industry, but as a general matter. That's a separate conversation, but I just wanted I just wanted to give you context for the conversation because it's a genuine one. And I think I can speak on behalf of our company, which is to say, we certainly are anxious to see who our new leadership is in the city. We can't make official company endorsements, but I think where some of us will be at the end and now. But we'll work with anyone who will work with us to, use our brain power, our brain trust, and try to find a way to make this social equity concept from a licensing perspective succeed. So I just want to put that out there as a public statement from the company that we'll work with anyone that'll work with us, and we hope that we can do that in the coming months.
Absolutely.
And weeks, really.
And I'll just add that we talk about access to capital. We did try to do some really innovative things, including the incubator licenses. We tried to think about how we could have someone who is a social equity partner link up and incubate, right? Their idea within a larger entity. I don't think that has had the impact that we wanted to have either because of the risk pool, right? The risk is just too high. So working to minimize that with the abolitionists who don't, or not the abolitionists, but the prohibitionists that don't believe the industry should exist anyways. You know, it's still not creating an environment where people can be successful. And so I'd love to talk to you more about what we can do, because I think there's some great ideas out there.
That'd be great. You, me and Dan can help at some point.
Yeah, sounds good. Yeah.
Kaylin?
So just like hearing what you guys are talking about, are there any like franchising opportunities? Like, is that something that would be allowed in our space where maybe a big company like us can create like a brand that then is licensed out where they get to use our name, they get to use our resources, but they're licensed? I wonder if that's because I
Yeah.
know that all of our brands are Starbucks, but we own all of them.
Yeah.
But like how anyone can run a McDonald's, anyone can run like an Orange Theory as long as they have the money, but they get that partnership. I wonder if that's an opportunity for a company like us.
That does exist. I think, I know that, for instance, I've worked with Simply Pure, with Wanda James to look at the franchising, and she's doing some of that. But it's got to come with that access to that equity, that those dollars, that capital. And you've got to figure out how to minimize the risk, you know, if you want them to truly succeed. And then you're also putting your brand identity on another person, right? Another group that you pretty much is likely to fail in general right now.
Yeah.
In general, you know? And so, yeah, I think there's actually, this would be great. I think there'd be some really creative and amazing opportunities for folks to come together, literally sit around and almost do Shark Tank-like style with folks pitching their ideas, but also providing the capital. So I also serve on the board for the Museum of Contemporary Arts. I love the arts, so I'm a trustee. And one thing that we've done with our youth groups, initially we just had like youth groups, you know, come in, do your art and everything. We've added different tracks, including a business track. And then they have a day where they actually have been pitching to artists or companies, whatnot. Well, this year they decided to come with capital. The company decided to come with capital and invested in their arts businesses in a way that they could then start their business for a few years and get on their feet. They've never had that opportunity before. This is our first year of doing it. We are seeing some of these businesses open with that support and that true mentorship. And their arts. They're down at Town Hall Collaborative now selling their artwork and actually understanding the business behind that to make that work, you know, or working with the 9 Dot Arts, who does all of the arts for all of our amazing, beautiful hotels to figure out what that could look like, you know? And so those type of folks who are able to invest their own dollars, their own access to capital to say, I want to incubate you in a way that you could be successful. That's what we need, you know? And as we see 1, 2, 3, 4 of these businesses can open and do well, we start to see them wanting to pay it forward too. So I think there's a lot of ideas to really get at social equity. It's not only in policy, right? It's in that kind of the entire environment that leads someone to be successful or not. And so as we think about the institutional barriers that are oppressive to one person of color, right? And then we think about those same barriers being oppressive to an entire education system where that people of color are in, and then a business environment that disproportionately impacts and has bad impacts on people of color, and then prison system, you know, it's like you go from the individual and then you realize it's so much an ecosystem. Like I can say that it's illegal to discriminate. Great. They're still racist. You know what I mean? Great. You know, like you're like, okay, what does that do for me? And so what we have to do is make sure that we're creating an environment where people can be successful. And our goal should be that thriving generational wealth building. Access to that for all communities is really where we're going to see change in society.
Yeah, and I would add, I think intention is key when going into something like that, because the intention has to be that you're willing to support people of color and women to grow in the business and not just look at it from, I'm just here to make money, because I think that also helps divide successful opportunities versus companies who are just looking to go in to make money and eventually just take ownership of it. Because I think some of the things I read about when it comes to social equity is these big companies want to go in and do the social equity work with POC that are owning these businesses, but 3 years later down the line, they fail and then the larger businesses take over. So it's like long term, there's no positive impact.
Yeah, and it's still for pennies, pennies on the dollar, you know? It's just so they can, you know, feed themselves for the next year, basically, because that's the hole that they've been dug into, so.
But I think we have ideas where it can benefit both parties, you know, what they get equity in our company and they can make a lot of money out of it. But, and as well as on doing business on a day to day. So I think it'd be good to have a discussion at some point.
Agree.
Because we have some ideas.
Agree. And I think, again, in leadership, having these conversations and then having someone who knows how to make them work is important. That's why I think it's, again, good that Dan's here because he's been a legislator before. So he knows, well, okay, we're not going to pass this at the state level completely, but I might be able to get an exemption or a pilot so we can get started.
If I want to see.
You know what I mean? 100%. Like we should do that. Or at the city level, okay, the city is going to invest or the city is going to take some of that risk, we're going to have some agreements and that's what we're going to do. These are things that can be done. Literally laws are just made by man and women. But we're trying to say stuff, but that's it. Like we're just normal everyday people. That's where they come from. And quite frankly, we get them wrong or sometimes they're out of date. But we can change them. We can change them. I was bad growing up, clearly, because I didn't believe in following a lot of the rules. I was like, that doesn't make sense. I could do whatever I want. But I do take that into kind of today as well and say, you know what, that doesn't make sense. I'm going to change it so that it does. And that's what we all have the power to do, right? It's not, you don't have to be an elected official or have a name tag or whatever, run a company to be able to make those changes. You just have to start building that will and that energy. And we do have the power to make those changes. Small and big. So, any final questions?
I guess mine will be more personal.
Yeah.
But I guess in general, what keeps you going as far as like all of the initiatives that you want to get across the finish line and the challenges that you probably face. What keeps you knocking on that door?
Yeah. For me, it's the opportunity to make real difference in people's lives, especially young people. I'm very concerned about our young people today. There's a lot, there's a lack of hope right now. A lot of our young people are going to school armed right now because they're afraid. There's a lot of youth violence. And we know we create that as a society, by lack of opportunities, by telling people they're not worth it. And so I think when people see us having these conversations, when people, companies put themselves out there and say, everyone's going to participate in this, it does change hearts and minds, and it makes a difference. So the thing that keeps me going is that I believe that we can make a difference. I believe that. It's not easy and it's not going to just happen overnight, but someone's got to be committed to us, someone's got to be committed to the people. And for me, that's more important. Now I would say I don't have any kids, and so that makes me, I think, a little bit more bold too, in my actions when it comes to some of this work. But I also do it for the kids. But when I was fighting for our police accountability bill, I mean, someone shot at me. Bullets went in the Capitol building. And it was in that moment that I realized that the work is just more important. Getting it done. I wasn't going to let them make me afraid to do it. Again, so many folks have fought for us to be here, to have all of us to be here and have this conversation. It's our responsibility to do something with it. So that's what keeps me going every day. And I have a dope team, so. All right. Well, thank you guys so much for having me. I appreciate it. Do tune into the election. Ballots mail March 13th. The election is April 4th. You all can make a difference this cycle, in every election cycle. I'm not just blowing smoke, but there are 17 people in the race. If you wait until the runoff or you wait until general elections to get involved, you will not be able to pick your player.
17 people in the race.
17 people in the race still. It's going to stay that way. The ballot is set. So, every vote will matter.
Representative Herod, we wish you well in the next few weeks. We hope that you get some sleep, and if you need any of our products to do so, please don't hesitate to reach out. I'm just kidding, kind of.
Thank you, Dan. I'll text you on Signal later.
Yeah, exactly. But I just want to say thank you on behalf of the company for taking the time. I can only imagine how many events you have that you have to attend, even the rest of today, and to take the time out of your day to spend some time educating us, helping us understand and learn, not just as individuals, but as a company, as we merge our culture and help to become better corporate citizens. We appreciate it. So let's give her a round of applause. Thank you for your time.
Thank
Thank you
you.
for your energy.